What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN Game Scoop. I'm your host, Damon Hatfield. Joining me this week is Tina Amini.
The octopus is back. It's behind
Welcome back, Octo Scoops. Justin Davis.
Scoop.
And Sam Claiborne.
What's on your Hatfield today?
I'm starting the campaign. The game I was gushing about last week, Eternal Castle, has been removed from the Nintendo eShop on Switch, even though it did nothing wrong. It's an amazing game, and it needs to come back on Nintendo Switch. So I'm starting the campaign.
Oh.
Eternal Castle did nothing wrong.
Didn't it show a bunch of blood or something?
Like pixelated blood? It wouldn't even. I don't even think it would have been red. Anyway,
technically, all blood is pixelated.
I don't understand what that means, but we do have a great show for you today. Lots to talk about. Lots of really fun listener emails to get through. But first, Tina, I know you've been working a lot on IGN's Summer of Gaming.
That's true.
And now our schedule's out in public.
That is also true.
Hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to take a look at the schedule. It's all kicking off next week. Tina, is there anything you want to highlight or make sure that people are aware of? When do people need to start tuning into our coverage?
Absolutely. I mean, next week, June 4th, but, full disclosure, we reserve the right to move things around as necessary. I think a lot of people are, making announcements and catching up with their own assets and their own team, figuring out work from home scenarios. So it's important for us to stay nimble, which is what we've been doing as we've been planning this whole thing and making lots of shifts and turns. But as far as highlights, first and foremost, this is the first time that IGN's actually putting on a press conference of our own, and not just that, but we're putting on 3 press conferences. We're calling them IGN Expo. That's June 5th, June 8th, June 9th. So it's all exclusive content. Some of it is actual game reveals. Some of it is, the developer interviews along gameplay that you're familiar seeing from us during normal E3, during normal June time frame. But I think the other big thing to note is it's kind of impossible for us to be completely transparent about everything that we're working on because we're still working on it. So There's lots of updates to come. So it's as full a schedule as we could get ready for public eyes, just to give people an idea of what's to come in the show and get excited about things that they're personally looking forward to. But lots of big updates from Blizzard and Xbox and a lot of those big people that you like seeing games from.
Yeah, sure. I need to add something here that I thought was really cool about this. E3 is not just about the big press conferences. When you go to E3, you discover games. You see a bunch of cool stuff on the floor, and that's the stuff that I feel like we have the unique obligation to show people. Yes, you guys are going to be able to see these big conferences. We're carrying them. We're going to do awesome stuff around those, and those games we're going to cover too. But I don't think there's anybody else that has the stuff that we released over the past couple of days. Our schedule has something for everybody. It has games that only people that like this show will like, and games that people that I would never play. And they're just for everybody. And that's how E3 should be. And seriously, there's a lot of people out there that are going to be, watching these big streams this summer. But check out what we have. We have cool stuff to show, and a lot of neat next gen games you've never seen before and stuff like that.
On that note, I can tease something for the Game Scoop audience that we haven't talked about publicly yet, which is we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. If you like VR games, there'll be VR games content there. If you like indie games, there'll be plenty of indie games as well. And we're creating a new segment around our dear friend Tom Marks, where he'll be highlighting, hidden gems, essentially, that you might not otherwise have been able to see if you were just paying attention to a big conference. And that is a big part of us being able to go to these events, is discovering games that are harder to, come above the fold of the big Square Enix drops and the big Sony drops. So it's going to be his segment that he's curating all on his own, and hopefully, identifying some cooler, lesser known games.
Isn't Tom the best?
He really is. I mean, bow ties and pies aside, he's still the very best. Even beyond that.
A funny Tom anecdote. Tom sends me game suggestions. He's like, I really think this is a Justin game. You're really going to like it. And it usually involves either cards or building a settlement of some kind. Those are the two things. And then I felt very special to get these Tom Marks game suggestions. And Zach Ryan said that Tom sends Zach games and says, I really think this is a Zach Ryan game.
Yeah, he does that to me too.
Oh
yeah,
but
sorry.
Are they the same games? Are they the same games?
No, they're different.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does he call them Damie games though?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
he knows his shit.
Yeah, he's very thoughtful and tries to recommend games that he thinks individuals will like.
We should make some kind of show for him or something. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, you just announced it. Can we talk about the name that he originally came up with for it?
Yeah, there's an internal name that we are absolutely not branding this alongside because we have to be careful, obviously, about names that we're using. But internally, like the project code name essentially was Tom's Nook.
That's
Pretty
good.
cute.
So
Pretty cute.
Damon in Animal Crossing, there's a guy named Tom Nook, and he makes you pay off home loans. But here's the thing: he's called Tom Nook because he's a tanuki. So it's a little pun on Tom Nook tanuki.
Yeah, that's good. That's
And
very
Tom's
clever.
name is Tom, so
Yeah.
that's where we got there with it.
And his Nook is like the segment that he's on, right? So it's like, like this little section of Summer of Gaming.
It's his corner of Summer of Gaming, yeah.
Somebody's just like hunting something that I can't see. There's like
you probably had something horrible just run up your leg and you have no
like
idea.
a fruit fly or something. She was just like carefully hunting across the floor.
Well,
Sorry,
you ought to let her go actually hunt that down.
She's back at it.
Spare your home.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad she didn't lose her prey.
Tom's Marks could also be another one.
That's cute. I like that.
Show. Yeah. I'm good at naming stuff. Yeah, so this all kicks off next week, and next week could be a really big week. Who knows? There could be lots of PlayStation news to talk about next week. We don't know.
Maybe some other news. We don't know.
Some other news as well. And just as a heads up, we'll be recording Game Scoop as part of our Summer of Gaming coverage. So the show for the next couple 2 or 3 weeks might feel a little bit different. Still gonna be a great show. So we're gonna be talking about all these big announcements. But since we're like fit into our programming and we have to stay to a very strict schedule, we may have to rein things in just a little bit. The shows have to be like exactly an hour, I believe. So, and I don't know that we'll have time for things like 20 questions, but still be a great show. Well, we'll see. I just don't know. I can't promise that right now. We'll see.
I feel like that was just a notice for us more so than like the listeners.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wasn't talking to the listeners just now. I was talking to you three.
Yeah.
Just so.
It's good to know. Prepared.
Let's get
do you
into.
think Tom would want to do 20 questions with us?
What if it was 20 questions, but it was a game that we did reference in Summer of Gaming only?
Yeah.
There's a lot of games in there. It could be tricky.
It's a lot of game. Yeah.
Those are hard too, because we haven't played any of them yet.
That's true.
Yeah, you don't know. You may not know if your character wears a hat or not.
Unreleased 20 questions.
We should try that one sometime. This is a game that isn't out yet.
Yeah. Was this a game reveal on Summer of Gaming, or was it a deep dive gameplay interview?
Have we revealed this game so far on Summer of Gaming? Just a quick update on Final Fantasy VII. I have not beaten it because it just goes on forever. I'm in chapter 17. Hopefully it wraps up sometime soon because I feel like I'm ready to be done with that game. But
You're almost done.
it just goes on and on and on.
I think it's like 18 or 19 chapters.
I thought it was 18.
Yeah, so you're almost there.
So Damon, where am I if I'm in the sewers for the second time after chapter 14?
Yeah.
How close am I to you?
You're only a few chapters away, but you're hours away from me. Even after you go past the point of no return and you go into Shinra to rescue somebody, there's still hours and hours of the game after that. So.
Yeah. Isn't chapter 14 the other big? Isn't that like the big open section of the game? Yeah.
Yep. And I just got through all that. I did like a ton of side quests there and stuff. And then I was like, I'm done with these side quests. I found all the chocobos I'm going to find in my life and I'm going to move on.
I got to go let my cat in.
They go, the chocobos make a sound in the game when you're looking for them in the side quest. They go like, quee, quee. And they spell that out because I have subs turned on. And, every single character has like the subs that go down the side. And it says chocobo, quee, quee. It's really cute.
Damon, I just noticed we're both wearing Game Scoop shirts.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks for letting everybody know.
Well,
next week is for you and Justin. This week was for me and Damon.
Yeah.
Do you have a Scoop shirt at this point, Justin?
Yeah, I have one of the long sleeve ones.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
I'm pretty sure he owns all of them.
I was going to say, you must have.
Yeah.
Sample.
He actually just lends them out to people.
Justin owns one copy of every item in the IGN store.
Yeah. There's I think we have we're closing in on 3,000 shirts, so someone please send help.
Also, do we sell this pillow?
We
sell a shirt with this on it, but do we sell this pillow?
We don't sell that design in pillow form.
Where did you get that?
Pear sent it to me.
Aw. You know what you could do? You could buy the shirt and then just in a large enough size and cut it out and sew it into a pillowcase. Ginger on our product team actually takes shirts and then she cuts them out and then she frames them so they're like poster work too. It's cool.
Yeah,
We've been calling that character IGN Man, which is a horrible name. Like, clearly he needs to have a real name. And I think it was our publisher, John Davison, who suggested, this is from memory, but I think it was like Ignatius Geronimo Nelson. Or something
really
something close to that.
I'm going to have the best sleep of my life on this pillow. Oh, man. I got to put that away. I'm going to fall asleep.
He looks like Clippy.
Let's get into this week's show.
But first, just preamble.
yeah. That's the cold open. We're checking in with the listeners right off.
Hey, listeners.
Thank you. Remember, you can always reach us at the email address, gamescoop@ign.com, just like Rachel in Macomb, Michigan did. And she says, hello, Omega Cops, especially Tina.
Oh, hi.
So we
What
know
the hell?
We know who her favorite is.
I know what she means.
Rachel says, as excited as I am for Tony Hawk to come out in just a few months, I can't help but wonder if this is the year of the remakes and remasters. For example, the following are games either released or being released this year: Resident Evil 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, Destroy All Humans, SpongeBob Bikini Bottom, the Mafia Collection, the heavily rumored, amazing sounding Mario Collection, please be true. What do you think has inspired this uptick in remakes? Do you think more companies are trying to find the same level of success that Resident Evil 2 had? And to be clear, I'm glad these games are being updated, and I hope to see more of my past loved games pop up. It's true. There's even more than she mentioned. There was Warcraft 3 Reforged, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is out now. 13, the game that totally bizarre Ubisoft cel-shaded first-person shooter from the 2000s is getting remade. Crysis is being remastered.
World of Warcraft Classic technically counts.
Was that just this year?
Oh, we're talking about just this year? I don't think so. I think that was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Shout out to Duggan, who still hasn't finished his review of that game. Oh wait, he doesn't work with us anymore.
I never got finished.
Yeah, we don't have a review in World of Warcraft Classic.
I think I don't know if this is a new phenomenon, and I don't know why we're noticing it so much this year, because like it's been an ongoing thing, and there's always collections and there's been special remakes like the Shadow of the Colossus a few years ago and stuff like that. But boy, I don't know if it's because a few of those tested the waters and then people saw that they work, or it's because like development is suddenly like in a spot where it's easier to remake games because they're built on like some kind of structure that makes it easier. Like there's something happening that makes us notice them more. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think every company did one or two, and that was so eye-opening, and they're like, oh, these really work and these sell well. And so then that opened the floodgates. Video games also have a lot more history now, right? Like when I was growing up with video games, I did miss the Atari era, but I was basically there from like mostly the start. And like, but there are people that are adults now, like adults with careers and lawyers that are in their 20s that like didn't get to play PS1 era games because, you know, they were too little, or maybe, you know, at least like 8 or 16-bit games. So it's really, really good. Like the older and more history the video game industry has, the more important it is to find a way to bring back and keep those older experiences alive.
Yeah. I think it's partially definitely what you guys have already identified as far as like seeing some successes and wanting to replicate that. And I also think like, you know, occasionally when people come out with new IPs or new directions for games, like take Fallout 76 as an example. Obviously there are elements of, okay, maybe that development didn't go in a direction it should have. Some balls were dropped in these areas or whatever else, but there's just so much more of a risk, I think, for criticism, and taking something that was successful in its time, replicating it now, but with modern upgrades is maybe a safer bet. And I'm definitely like, you know, armchair analysting it right now. But it feels like there's a sense of security there to take something that has a fan base attached to it right from the get-go. And Resident Evil is such a good example too, because that kind of trailed off as a series. So going back to the ones that were tried and true, were successful, were good and well received, and remaking those is almost like more of a secure bet, I guess.
You know, video games don't travel the way that other entertainment mediums do. Like you can still go back and listen to the White Album or watch Casablanca, but video games get lost to time unless companies make a deliberate effort to bring them back and make them playable in the modern era. It's the thing I like least about video games, actually, is that they can just disappear in a way that nothing else can.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity, like, the entire, the Mario remakes, rumored Mario remakes are exciting because then it gives us an opportunity to play things that we hadn't, gives like the newer generation, the younger generation opportunities to play those too. And maybe in a way that, if you didn't have access to your older consoles, didn't keep them around, mom threw them out or whatever, it's an opportunity to do that. Yeah. Well, speaking from experience.
What's funny is that like there's now, just by the nature of time, more sequels to be remade and everything than ever, because there's just more games to remake. Like every 10 years that passes, there's more games you can remake. And so I think we're just seeing remaking grow as much as gaming is. Also, like, have you guys heard? I forget who was saying this, but one developer was talking about how difficult. I think it was for Bloodstained, like how difficult it is to actually do pixel art now, and like people fake it in all these ways, and it's kind of hard to make a 2D game. There's not like a platform for those really. You kind of make them in 3D stuff. I just wonder if like all the stuff we're getting now is also just because like it's easy to remake a Borderlands game or something compared to something from 40 years ago that you got to think like, well, how are we going to make a 2D platformer feel really good now?
Well, they just remade Missile Command. There's a new
Missile
Command.
Or is it just a new Missile Command?
Well, it's not like a sequel or anything. It's just sort of a reimagined Missile Command. I don't know. It doesn't look that cool to me.
That was probably the earliest remakes that ever happened, would be like arcade games getting ports to home systems. But I remember the Mario All-Stars collection being like a really big deal. Like they remade the Mario games for Super Nintendo back then, and they were really fun, and they remarketed that whole thing. That was the first time I ever remember that really happening.
Yeah. Do you think those Mario remakes are still happening this year? We just haven't. It's been a while since those rumors, and we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I wonder. They like at this point they might do like a and it's available today type of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Paper Mario thing came out of nowhere and turned out to be true, right? So that was a good sign. What I was thinking when we had our remake conversation last week, and we're continuing it this week, is that there's always the Metroid Prime trilogy discussion around that. And like in these weeks between these big releases that are coming up right now, like I so wish I could be playing the Metroid Prime games right now on my Switch. That would just be the best thing ever.
Yeah, I never played the first one.
No, either one of my children is literally killing the other one, or they're playing the most fun game out there you can imagine. I'm trying to stop that sound from coming through my microphone.
Streams of Glee?
Question mark?
I don't think we can hear him on our end.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I guess if you're gonna remake a classic, a beloved game, like the marketing departments, like half their job is already done for them, right? Like you don't need to sort of introduce a new world or new characters and tell people like what the gameplay is like to set up the universe. I was thinking like when a game is something that's completely new, a totally new IP. Like what was the game that we streamed today? Is it Outriders?
Yeah.
It's almost just like I have no idea what this is. If they made another like Final Fantasy VII remake, I know I've got such a frame of reference for what I'm getting into here, but like, oh, this is something new. I have no idea what these characters are, or what the genre is, or what I'm going to be doing.
I don't want to. And then they introduced a bunch of new proper nouns of like the names of play. I'm like, I don't need to learn a new like world.
Yeah.
Well, so it's kind of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, if you have to market something new, yeah, you're right. You have to learn all of those new systems, those new names. People might end up being like, oh, that's just, a so-and-so look-alike. Like they're just ripping off of this other game. That's kind of the frame of reference everyone uses when they're talking about new IPs, I guess. But on the other hand, like for a remake, like we saw with Final Fantasy VII, that double-edged sword comes into play because it's like, well, now you have to honor everything from that original game, and you have to market things really specifically so that those fans don't feel like they're being let down in a remake. And like, Final Fantasy VII was trying to balance this line between adding things that are new, adding elements that probably help people who are newer to the story kind of carry through the narrative, but also set up I'm trying not to spoil things, but set up things for the future essentially, so that it's still new and interesting at the same time as honoring like elements of the game that people loved and the characters, of course.
Yeah. Sure.
In any case, games are just more and more story focused now. They just weren't like that before too. Like it's really helpful to have some of these to like catch up on the story if you really care about that stuff. I really like that part of them. I also liked when Mass Effect did that thing where they gave you this like choose your own adventure thing just to catch you up to Mass Effect 2. That was so cool. I would love that for games. If I just want to play an Assassin's Creed sequel, I wouldn't mind clicking through something like that to catch up.
Well, you kind of did that in Witcher 3. I forget what conversation you're having with some sort of like high royalty powered person, but they're like, "So, what did you do in this instance that happened in this previous Witcher game?" And you get to kind of like map out your narrative like in real time in the game.
Sam's completely right. Like long-running franchises that are serialized and have a connected story that becomes like a problem and a liability over time for the game makers, right? So, remakes and remasters become a way to like onboard people into the franchise or catch them up, or it's like marketing for the next installment to come. Like it becomes important. Like that's
the BioShock collection for sure.
And that was Kingdom Hearts as well.
Kingdom Hearts, yeah.
Yeah. In any case, video game remakes are nothing new, but it seems like there's just more than ever being released in 2020, as Rachel correctly observed. Moving on, this is Alan from Ithaca, New York. He wants to know if a rewind feature should be just built into consoles so you can use it on every game. He says, as I watched my son playing Punch-Out on the Switch the other day, I was thinking about how the rewind feature they added is like a retrofitted assist mode that he was taking full advantage of to win every fight without taking a hit. That made me wonder if you could snap your fingers and magically add a rewind feature to a modern console that worked instantly for every game, would you? On the one hand, I think about my son who, let's face it, would never have gotten to see the majority of that game, or a dozen other classics if the rewind feature didn't exist. On the other hand, would it take something away from a brand new AAA action game to know that any element of challenge the developer might have intended was now just a suggestion? Don't get me wrong, I'm not worried about if other people rewind or not. They can play however they enjoy the most. For me personally, I appreciate the option for older games, but I know I would abuse it if it was possible for all games.
But that's okay to abuse it if that's the experience you want.
Mm-hmm. But it's
I have so many thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's the temptation is what I'm sort of wrestling with. Like my gut reaction is like make games as accessible as possible. Let everyone play every game. Like introduce a story mode, a no damage mode, like whatever you need to do. Then games can be enjoyed by more people. But I'm thinking about myself, like if God of War had a rewind or some other games had a rewind, the temptation to use it instead of just try again, I feel like would be very, very strong. Maybe they can patch it into every game 6 months after launch.
6 months later, yeah.
6 months later, or you can you have to send each person has to send a letter for approval and make their case as to why they need the rewind feature, and then the developer can decide on a case by case basis. That seems very reasonable to me.
I think we don't have enough cheats. I love cheat codes. I love breaking games. I love that stuff. And that was always a part of games. You are not a cooler gamer if you don't use cheat codes. Trust me. I see the traffic to cheats pages. Everybody's using cheats codes. You're not cool. Use them. So I think all games should have cheats. And I think that's my favorite thing about retro collections and Prince of Persia Sands of Time. I think that's a really cool thing that only games can do in this like really fun way where you can manipulate reality that way. I already think that we're past the threshold of you can ruin games. Like easy modes can already give you a different experience than somebody playing on a normal hard mode. Like nobody's arguing about those anymore. There are people that are saying like the Final Fantasy one is not great and stuff like that. That's open to criticism, but it doesn't ruin the normal mode, and people can still play the normal mode. And if you really care, you got an achievement to show that you did the normal mode.
That's true.
I guess it would playing devil's advocate and thinking about the perspective of if there was this wider accessibility that did fundamentally change your experience, because it does. And I want everybody to have their own personal experience that they're looking for because it's entertainment at the end of the day. But maybe it changes the discourse, the conversations people are having around the game when it comes out. Reviews are out. Obviously, reviews would be the exclusion there, or should be for every media outlet, to make sure that they're playing, in a standard mode of operation. As the developer designed or intended. But outside of that, like people playing it, are they going to come up and say like this game was garbage? It was super easy because they were abusing a rewind mode or an easy difficulty, something like that. But I personally always have too much shame to drop down to easy for the most part. So I'll usually stay pretty consistent on normal. I don't venture into like higher difficulties, but occasionally I do like to leverage them if I'm trying to get through a game a little faster. So it's nice to have options.
We do play games with a rewind button. They're Fallout games and Skyrim games. Like everybody just rewinds to their last save when they screw up. That is the main gameplay of Fallout. You make 120 saves in a session, and you just safety save constantly. They give you a quick save button. That's just an inconvenient rewind. You should be able to have a quicker, faster rewind.
That's a good point. It's like so developers can build a rewind function into their game if they want to, and we see that with a lot of retro collections. But it's interesting to think about that feature being built into the console and the console handling that functionality. Mm-hmm. And I think, as Tina was sort of alluding to, I think there would be a lot of developers who would not be wild about that.
Yeah,
could be.
I mean, there's games that are predicated entirely on like permadeath. Like that's their core mechanic, like roguelikes. Like that's the central tenet of like the entire game is that you only get one shot, and like sometimes they go as extreme as to like delete your save game if you fail. So
yeah, it creates a weird dichotomy because I believe that like the artist, the creator, has the freedom to make whatever art they envision to attempt to achieve their artistic vision, however that may be. But then once it gets into the hands of the consumer that's paid for it, I feel like the consumer has complete control over how they want to use the art that they've purchased.
Yeah. How would Journey have turned out if there was a difficulty mode, like super ultra hard difficult? I don't even know what that means, but it's just such an interesting kind of thought.
The mountain is just a lot taller.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't. That game had drop in, drop out multiplayer though, right? So it's like you're clearly not rewinding in any kind of multiplayer context in any game. It's impossible. Every
other form of medium allows you to skip around in it. It just does movies, records, anything you can buy. You're allowed to skip around, do whatever you want. Games are the only thing that force you through it.
It is crazy that not every video game has a chapter select after you beat the game. Like I want to Uncharted. I'll go back and play the set pieces in Uncharted just to re-experience them. And like any game that disallows you from doing that is crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, chapter counts and being able to jump around between them, that and like recorded amount of time that you've been playing are two features that I think every single game should have where possible.
Yep.
Yeah, I love knowing how much time I've spent in a game.
It should record your time playing, and it should pause the timer when you pause the game. Final Fantasy VII doesn't do that.
Why do they do that?
I've spent like 100 hours in that game just leaving it paused for a while.
I'm in the pause screen and the time is still ticking up. It's like, what are you doing?
It's Animal Crossing time.
Damon, I want to circle back to a point that you made about like, the intent of the artists. Like the game developers really do seem to fall on these two tracks of like, we intended the game to be played in this way, like a Dark Souls, for example. Like, yes, an easy mode would open the game up to more people, and I personally am in favor of it, but I respect the opinion of the people that made it. Like, this is our intent. This is how we want the game to be experienced. But then there's developers on the extreme other end that just don't. They're like, mod whatever you want into our game. Like, we don't care. Like, this is a set of tools that you can use to be as creative as you want.
This is very relevant to a recent Rick and Morty episode, if you guys watch that show.
I don't. They talk about rewind features?
Yeah, there's an episode where where Morty gets a rewind feature for his life, essentially.
That'd be useful. Some of the
watch the episode.
Okay. So some listeners have been saying they'd like more TV recommendations for us. So we'll try to bring that up from time to time. I haven't been watching anything new since What We Do in the Shadows, though, which I think I'm caught up on.
Well, I freaking love it, and I didn't realize it's in season right now. So I was so excited when I was like rewatching, and I was like, "There's another episode." And then I was like, this week, I was like, "There's another episode," and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's in season." I'm so out of touch with television now.
That's like when you put on an old jacket and there's a $20 bill inside.
Yeah, it was amazing. It felt so good.
Okay, moving on. This is Kevin in Essex, UK. He says, last August, my wife and I were blessed with the birth of our first child. I've always been a pretty big gamer. Initially, I could still play games while staying up with the little man. However, after a few months, he settled into a good sleep routine, so I no longer needed to stay up through the night, and as a result, I have not touched my Xbox or Switch for several months now, choosing sleep over gaming. These are real choices parents have to make. I've been thinking of just watching cutscenes of games instead of playing them, just so I understand the story. I've never owned a PS3 or PS4, so I'll probably never get around to playing The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, or Death Stranding. Would any of you consider just watching the cutscenes online or maybe playthroughs in order to save time, but still get to experience the story of a game?
There are YouTube channels that actually string together cutscenes into movies, essentially, for games for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Neat.
it's on a game by game basis, but like in the case of Last of Us, for example, so much of the storytelling is happening through the gameplay journey, right? Like sometimes in a literal way, like there's story coming at you during the gameplay, but sometimes also just figuratively, like traveling from point A to B and seeing the sights. So the question, would I personally consume a game that way? No, but I would consider watching like a let's play, like a long play of a game that was just the entire game stitched together. But I wouldn't feel comfortable. I'd feel like I was missing too much to have the actual gameplay cut out.
Yeah, The Last of Us is a good example because they specifically wanted to design moments. So we, did a series called Expert Mode for a while, and we did one for The Last of Us where we talked to the creative director Bruce Straley and kind of like walked through some design decisions and whatnot, big moments in the game. And he mentions that specifically where he talked about like world building and character building and relationship bonding between Joel and Ellie, while you're just walking or finding a ladder to elevate to the next platform or whatever else. Like they wanted you to have design, like story design in those gameplay moments too, to kind of emphasize that. So you're right, like you would be, for that kind of game, you would totally be missing out on a lot of that. I only ever really watch cutscenes for a couple of reasons. One is I'm very forgetful, so I like to brush up on games that have been like many years gone that I haven't played for a while, and so I'll rewatch cutscenes of major moments to remind myself of some of those story elements. And then I actually did recently, when I finished Final Fantasy VII, I looked up cutscenes for the original because I wanted to see like really big important scenes that were really quintessential to the game at the time. I wanted that frame of reference.
Yeah,
that's exactly how I use it. I love going to retro games and thinking like, I probably won't ever play this, but I want to know, like for Metal Gear Solid 2 was one I really remember clearly, like going through a lot of the game, scrubbing through it, watching the cutscenes and figuring out, because I was like, I don't really like Metal Gear Solid 3. I liked 4. I'm going to play 5. Like I was in this like weird zone where I was like, I need to know about this game. So definitely did it there.
Also,
it was too much. It was like 20 hours. I was like, I'm not.
That's what Death Stranding would be like.
Yeah, exactly. The other time that I'll watch cutscenes too is if there are alternate endings. I definitely like to know, this was my ending, but what were the other ones that other people got?
Yeah.
I also, my version of that, if there's a game that I'm curious about or want to know about, but don't want to invest a lot of time in, is just to play it on easy. And it's not necessarily because I don't like being challenged about games. We talked about this with Final Fantasy, where like, first of all, play any game on whatever difficulty you want, but like easy saves you time. So if you're just trying to blast through something as fast as possible just to be caught up or just to experience some version of it, like to me, that's the exact right context that I want to bump down the difficulty and just, blast through something ASAP with the full knowledge that like I'm not getting the experience that I would have gotten, normally.
Sure.
I think one suggestion I'd have is to have your brother or sister or a friend over that doesn't have a child and have them play the game at your house so you can check in and watch it for a little bit. You can do a little over-the-shoulder controlling of that game because there's nothing more fun than playing a game with a friend, even if you're just watching. I think that's the best way to experience a game if you're not holding the controller.
That's definitely something I miss as an adult. And for me personally, it'd be highly unlikely that I would want to just watch cutscenes of a game online, primarily because I'm actually not that interested in video game stories. That's just not like what the real draw. That's not what the real draw is for me. And I get also like Kevin in Essex, he doesn't own a PlayStation 4, so like it's a little bit different. I can still pretty much play every game that I want to play, but like.
And just to be clear, Damon and I are in it for the points.
Yeah, just trying to get a high score.
High score.
Those meaningful internet points.
Oh yeah.
Real quick to Justin's point too, just as like an interesting trend that I've noticed is like they've started a lot of developers have changed the phrasing for difficulty settings, and like an easy setting is kind of called story mode or something related to that now. So they're just trying to change the context of that.
Remember the extreme games? It'd be like wimp mode, and it'd be like, you're okay.
Doom still does that. Doom still does that.
Yeah, that's true. But that's a very Doom style thing to do. Like you can't get rid of that.
I guess so. It's kind of its whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Facundo, who's writing from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Since I'm a longtime listener, I'd like to say thank you, Omega Cops, for all your hard work. What I wanted to ask you guys is, do you remember feeling truly free inside a video game for the first time? When did it happen? What were you playing? To me, this sort of awakening happened at the age of 12 or 13 when a dear friend of mine insisted that I play The Elder Scrolls for Oblivion, and it just blew my mind away. Everything changed after that. Nothing was ever the same. I couldn't believe the kind of freedom could be achieved inside a video game. Of course, I didn't have much experience with RPGs or open world adventure games at the time. So the first time we remember feeling really free inside a video game.
I have some bad experiences with that and good ones. I remember Grand Theft Auto 3 was like a good one where it was like, this is a playground that's in real, I was more interested in the playground than any other part of that game. Driving around, running people over, doing all the fun stuff in that game was like an actual sandbox. And the first time I thought about what a sandbox was, I think that's really cool. But if you walk it back, I remember the first time I played Legend of Zelda at a friend's house and I was like, this game sucks. I don't have a sword. What am I going to do?
That's what I specifically wanted to point that out, because I think The Legend of Zelda is the first time I remember feeling that freedom. You can go in any direction from the beginning. However, like you said, it was so open and so different for the time that Nintendo had to hold everyone's hands, and the instruction manual tells you exactly where to go to find the first temple. It tells you where to find the second temple. It shows you all the hidden magic items. It gave you a fold out map of almost the entire world of Hyrule. So there was a lot of hand holding with the original Legend of Zelda because it was so open.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's very much.
And then you're screwed.
Freedom for me is very much about movement. So anywhere where you can fly, let's say like Infamous or Saints Row or Spider-Man, any kind of free form movement is really fun because it feels like you're almost breaking the world because it's not the world that you're adjusted to. And RPGs are definitely an angle of that. But I think I've played enough where that's become a familiar thing. I don't want to say that I take it for granted, but it's kind of part of the experience. But yeah, when you get to incorporate fun stuff like that, it feels very freeing. Or even Batman, felt freeing because you were just gliding through all of the combat.
Yeah, they do. I like the way you phrase that. Where clearly those game worlds are intended to be flown through and flown over, and yet you still feel like you're sort of cheating and getting one over on the game, and I'm gonna drop down on these guys. Good sense of power there.
Yeah, exactly. It's the power element that feels freeing in that.
Mm-hmm. Mine is definitely GTA 3, which it's funny looking at that map today. We're it's 5 blocks, right? But it felt I'm going to go all the way over to the other island. And it felt like you were going on this big adventure, and the map is very quaint by today's standards. The Oblivion answer is a good one because that game, in every Elder Scrolls game, it's a trope at this point. But it has you in the sewers and in the dungeon first for not a long time, but an hour at least.
Killing rats.
And then you get out into the world, and then they all have that awesome moment. Fallouts do that where you leave the vault, that prologue, and then into the open world is that feeling's never going to get old. The other unusual answer for me is StarCraft, because that was the first time I can remember messing around with game mods and custom game modes, and that feeling of this game is a completely it can be remade into a completely different thing and a completely different experience. And it had this weird I would download and install weird StarCraft tower defense mods, and that freedom of browsing through a server and finding something weird and trying it was, I didn't do Doom multiplayer mods or anything like that. So that was the first time I felt like a game was really remixable in that way.
Mm-hmm. The first game I ever played that I talked about last week, Zork, that's a total open-ended, crazy exploration game. And that was my first experience I can even remember playing a game. And it just throws you into, a field by a White House, and then you just explore for the rest of your day. It's so fun.
I have not played Dreams, but I imagine that is the most freeing. Because you can literally just do whatever in there.
Yeah, I think the original Final Fantasy on NES also gave me a real feeling of adventure. Especially when you got the airship, you can just explore this whole wide world.
I can't believe they built that into that game. You spend all this time slowly trudging around, and then all of a sudden you're you can fly over everything. On the NES, that's amazing.
Fly over the oceans. Yeah,
you can just do whatever you want. As long as you landed on grass.
Exactly. And then Mario 64, the first time those giant open levels that had so much verticality, so many secrets to find, and so many places to explore, that also felt very freeing, I think.
I stopped playing video games for a few years. That's why I haven't ever played a PS1 game, except for going back now. And a friend of mine showed me, it must have been 1998 when I had stopped. for a few years. He showed me like he was playing Ocarina of Time. I was watching it, and I was like, "This is really cool. Like, I think this is a game." He's like, "Yeah, but watch this." And he's at Lake Hylia or Hylia, how people say it. I know. And he ran from there to Death Mountain, and it felt like it took 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And the whole time he's just running freely, and now that's like the GTA 3 thing. Like it probably took 7 minutes or something, or like 3. I don't know. It probably takes less time, but it was like so amazing to see all those environments and all those things, running past enemies instead of finding them, and just being like from like the bottom of this lake to the top of this mountain. Incredible. Yeah. Incredible. I got back into games because of that.
Video games are pretty cool. This is Jared from Kansas City. He says, with this generation in games coming to a close and Ghost of Tsushima likely being the swan song for the PS4, I wanted to ask the panel, what are your favorite swan song games? I've included some notable ones below. I've left off certain cross-gen release games such as Twilight Princess, which hit GameCube and Wii. Looking at this list, I had forgotten just how late Paper Mario came to Nintendo 64. It didn't arrive till 2001 in North America.
So did Conker. And Banjo-Tooie. Those are all good swan song games.
Yeah, well, Banjo-Kazooie is probably 2000.
Tooie
was 2000?
No, Tooie was like 2001. Banjo-Kazooie was 1998.
Okay. That's what you're saying. So these are some that he, what's his name? Jared from Kansas City. For the Genesis, he recommended Sonic and Knuckles from 94. But now games...
It was a song.
The games continued to come out for the Genesis for a couple of years. And Vector Man 2 was in 1996. And I know we were hating on Vector Man a little bit last week, but it was still very impressive.
I thought there was 3.
Sam was.
We love Vector Man on this show.
Vector Man 2 was 96, and it was very impressive at the time. So that might be a little bit more fitting swan song for the Genesis.
He included Super Nintendo ones, right?
For Super Nintendo,
Game Boy's obvious. Dude, Pokemon just came at the end of what was supposed to be the Game Boy life cycle.
Yeah, Pokemon was 98.
That's so crazy.
Did we say Donkey Kong Country already?
Well,
it was 94.
There's that one. But for Super Nintendo, he suggested Mario RPG, which is 96.
Yeah, that's the famous one because it came out after Mario 64.
The same year as 64.
It came out same year. I've said after on this show many times, and then someone corrected me, but it was the same year as Mario 64.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That game's just okay, too. And Chrono Trigger was really late, too.
Mario RPG is just okay? No, it's not. That game's awesome.
You're right. It's
man.
Bad. It's
bad.
My
gosh.
I agree with Sam. It's outclassed by Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario.
It's better than Vector Man. For Nintendo 64, we talked about Paper Mario and Conker's Bad Fur Day, were both 2001 games, which is the same year that the GameCube came out, I believe.
2003.
Those butted up against each other. I mean, yeah. Majora's Mask was late too. It was 2000.
On PlayStation 1, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 came out in the year 2000, which was the year that PS2 was out, I believe. For NES, he suggested Super Mario Brothers 3, which was 1990. But
the games came out for 4 years after that.
Yeah, Mega Man 6. Mega Man 6 was 1994.
Yeah,
Wario's Woods.
Yeah, those are bad games.
But
there were the thing about the NES, and I was kind of on the pre-show with Tina when we were talking about this topic earlier. We were saying that I was saying that like people didn't want to play NES games after the Super Nintendo came out, and then also there's just ports of them to the Super Nintendo. All those games just came out on Super Nintendo, and so there wasn't a good swan song era.
I think
back then, but now there is.
To be a swan song, I don't think it's just a game that released late on a console. It's like the culmination of like using all the horsepower and like exceeding everything that had come before. So it's like, it's a game like Last of Us, like in my mind.
Yeah, if you look literally for Swan Song, like the games that actually came out in a console generations last year, 2 or 3, if you're being generous, especially in like more recent generations, they're all like Just Dance and a bunch of sports games, and it's just that becomes like the literal last few games that get released on those consoles.
That's really funny. Wait, we were also talking about earlier that Twilight Princess and obviously Breath of the Wild. those are the like great games to end a console, but they just got ported to the other one, so they're forgotten about. But man, that was a good end to both the Wii U and the GameCube.
I think we're like 10 years away from it being a mind-blowing video game fact that Breath of the Wild is on the Wii U. Like nobody owns it, and like it's so closely associated with the
You got to
Switch
be careful
and
when you
launch
say that
of the
because people have been tweeting at me for the past month pictures of the Wii U version of that game. And I don't know how we asked about it, but it was like I keep on getting it. Do you get that too, right, Damon?
Not so much. I don't think.
I get 2 or 3 a week. That's like, see, look, Sam, I have this, or like, look at this. It's still on our store shelf.
Okay, we get it.
I think it's funny.
We forgot to tell you. We actually. I was gonna make a dumb joke. You go.
No, I was gonna make a dumb joke too. I was just saying it's a conversational podcast, and when we say nobody owns something, please don't make me explain that I don't literally mean nobody, and I just mean it's not super popular and well known.
Yep, it does. You mentioned Last of Us. That's a pretty good one for PS3. But for that whole generation, 360 and PS3, GTA 5 came out just months before PS4 was released and Xbox One.
Yep, ported right after.
Definitely going to be Cyberpunk for this generation.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's true.
And Last of Us 2 and maybe Ghost.
So speaking of GTA 5, this is Josh from England. He says, during the lockdown, I took my old Sega Saturn to my dad for him to play while in isolation. He played it a lot when I was a kid. And I also gave him an Xbox 360 to try to modernize him a bit, although he still struggles having to move around in 3D worlds with 2 analog sticks. While I was cleaning everything before dropping it off, I dug out GTA 5, and it made me think this game has already dominated 2 generations of consoles, with GTA 6 a while away. My question is, will there be a Series X and PS5 version of GTA 5? I can't imagine Rockstar will want to lose the income from online users. Also, with launch years normally being a bit barren, will it sell all over again as one of the best games on the new platform? Also, can you think of any games that have been able to sustain releasing across 3 different generations?
Yeah.
Well, GTA 5 will work on the Xbox Series X. It's just
backward compat kind of changes that whole conversation.
Yeah.
And since Sony has said they're going to make sure the top 100 most popular PS4 games are compatible, that assuredly includes GTA 5.
I mean, GTA 5 is a platform for GTA Online, which continues to be a cash cow and be very, very popular with millions of people playing it. And, we saw what Epic gave it away, right? So that you could get the PC version for free now. So I think I'm going to say it, but I feel like I may end up eating these words. Or like 2K is almost getting beyond the point of like it feeling important to sell GTA 5 to people now. And I think they're reaching the point where like they want it in people's hands in order to onboard them into online, is the sense that I get.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and say nobody's playing GTA 5, and that game never existed.
Yeah, it's not at the top of our traffic all the time.
Prove me wrong. Tweet at Sam Claiborne.
And that brings us to video game 20 questions.
You said no more. No, I'm just kidding.
Before we get to it, we have a request on a clarification on how we would answer a question. And the request comes from Big Tony Style. Big Tony Style wants to know, one of the questions in last week's episode, does this game contain a vehicle? I'm just curious, would you consider a horse a vehicle? And so what if the game was Red Dead Redemption 2 and you asked, does this game include vehicles, and there weren't like horse and buggies? There are only horses that you could ride. How should I answer that?
Well, thanks for clearing up the buggy question. That's not.
Or trains. No trains too.
No, because if you said yes to that, then we would think it's not an old timey game. We'd think it's like something that's set now. Like you would really throw us off by that. So that would be not a good answer.
So a horse is a mount, but if they are on a wagon, that's a vehicle, is what I would say.
Yeah.
So
Can you ride something is what we'd have to ask to get all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, Tina's right in the technical sense, which is the best kind of right.
The only kind of right.
But when the word vehicle comes out of my mouth, I'm implying a motorized vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, planes, trains, and automobiles, essentially. But I feel like, a buggy could count, because what other, especially depending on the time, the era that it's set in, that would be the vehicle of that time.
But what
And
if
you're not
it's
on the horse.
what if it's a man in a wheelbarrow?
When does
So it's
that happen, though?
What if it's a
I don't know.
robot horse?
A skateboard. Is a skateboard? Yeah, skate or die. Does that have vehicles?
Well, I'll tell you what. Skateboards with motors are a crime,
Yeah.
as I've seen on the T-shirt.
That's a really interesting question, though. It's not a vehicle.
No, vehicles are self-propelled.
Self-propelled.
So is a horse.
A car isn't self-propelled.
Yes, it is self-propelled. It has an engine that's propelling
you
it.
have to propel it with
No, you're not propelling it. If you put a stone in that car, it would propel itself.
But that doesn't work because a horse is self-propelled.
Yeah. Also, I'm self-propelled.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a vehicle now.
The vehicle has to be a technical invention that's self-propelled.
It's something that you ride.
Okay, so we're gonna start to burn questions on: is it a vehicle? Does it have 2 wheels? Does it have 4 wheels? Does it have animal legs? Does it?
Yeah. All right, I got to go back to the very beginning of this episode, in which I said technically all blood is pixeled. That, Damon, you realize that that's true. There's no game that doesn't have blood without pixels. Everything is pixels.
Okay, but when you say all blood, I think of the blood that's inside me.
How do you know? Maybe you're part of the Matrix. Maybe you're just high res.
Could be.
I chose a blue pill. Okay, our suggestion this week comes from Joe from Maryland. Let the questioning begin.
I'm not going to do it. No, I'm going to do it. Does this game have vehicles?
No.
Okay. But
sounds like
we don't know where we landed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or skateboards.
By Sam.
So games with horses. Games
by
with
the
horses.
definition.
Right.
No, not vehicles.
Okay. This is from before 2000?
Yes.
Is there multiplayer in this game?
No.
Do you walk around on feet in this game?
Yes.
Is it licensed?
No. That's 5.
What was the answer to before 2000? No?
Yes.
Oh, it was... Wait.
It's from before 2000.
Okay.
Is this on a cartridge?
No. No. Hard no.
Same question. Was this an arcade game?
No.
That wasn't the same question. No, I don't even know how to phrase it that way. Same question. PC board. Okay. So
was this game on the PlayStation 1?
Yes.
Why would the cartridge thing have tripped you up?
Because
he was debating over
games
whether
are re-released.
Yeah.
On cartridge later.
But it wasn't released on cartridge.
Did this
not on
this
Switch
game
or
developed in Japan?
Yes.
Japanese PS1 game.
Is it an RPG?
I'm out.
It is an RPG of sorts. That's 10.
So RPG elements.
Does Final Fantasy Tactics have vehicles in it?
I don't think so. I'm trying to debate over whether you're ever fighting like a tank or something in that game. There's no vehicles. I don't know where to go from here. Was this game exclusive to the PlayStation 1?
Yes.
Is it part of a series?
Yes.
Is the series still active today?
Yes.
Is it still wait, I don't know if I want to ask that question. Is it still I kind of want to ask if it's still an exclusive.
It is an exclusive?
Was this
I think it would be. It was an exclusive.
It was, okay.
But I think this game developed by like a PlayStation studio, a Sony studio?
No.
Okay. I'm really hung up on you saying it's an RPG of a sort, because it's like, it's not Suikoden or Chrono Cross or Final Fantasy or any of those.
I think the non-exclusive question's a good one.
I think it's probably a Final Fantasy spin-off.
Is it a Final Fantasy spin-off now?
Is this a Square Enix game?
Is it a
Square game?
It's a Square Soft game. Yes.
Ooh, that's really good.
That's 15.
So, I don't know, Parasite Eve, there's stuff like, but they're not active anymore.
Kind of. No, that one had a mobile game that went away, yeah. Something
that had RPG elements made by Square that's still around, still getting sequels today, or it's the franchise is still active today. Exclusive to the PS1, made by Square.
Is this a Final Fantasy game?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, it's tactics, right?
it probably is. Yeah, it probably is tactics. I don't know if I would call that active.
What other Final Fantasy games are there?
Well, there's
No, he's just saying that the series is active. That Final Fantasy is very active.
It's got to be.
They've announced a new Christie Chronicles.
Yeah, it comes out August 27th. They got the release date today. Yeah, I mean, okay, is this a tactical RPG game?
Yes.
Yeah, is it Final Fantasy Tactics?
Yes. Final Fantasy Tactics.
Nice, pretty efficient.
And that's why I thought we were going to have a whole thing about the vehicles thing because of the Chocobo situation.
Oh, the Chocobo. Well, Chocobo are definitely vehicles.
Okay. Gotcha.
When was the last Final Fantasy Tactics? It's been a while.
They
Game
did
Boy?
2 for Game Boy Advance, I want to say. But I just meant it's part of the overall Fantasy franchise.
I'll allow it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Wow, we got it.
Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion, Joe from Maryland. Final Fantasy
I don't
Tactics.
think the person from last week added me when we lost. We lost big.
What was last week again?
Wait, was last week Abe's Odyssey or was it before?
No,
We lost on that one too.
no, we got Abe's Odyssey.
You did get
maybe
Abe's
we
Odyssey? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember what last week's was.
John, what was
That's
last week's?
To look at my
Called
notes.
the producer.
At us.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know, man.
Square or Final Fantasy
together.
Tactics was really.
Oh, it was Fantasy Star Online.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's
Fantasy Star
right.
Online.
Yeah. Which was insult to injury. We ran a review also that same day.
That's good. Tactics was released on PSP and now it's on iOS.
Nice.
Really
Yeah.
good game.
I wonder how the
Actually-
iOS version is.
It's good. I have it on my phone. I completely had forgotten.
That'd be a really good iOS game.
But the only thing, it was on iOS, ported many years ago, like literally 6 or 7 years ago to iOS, and so sometimes that ecosystem has
gone.
been around long enough that games can break now if the developer doesn't continue supporting.
That was
them.
part of that series of Square Enix games where they were like $20 and people
Yeah.
flipped out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they were even more than that. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. That's about all the scoops that we have for you this week. Next week should be a really fun week. Lots to talk about. And of course, IGN's whole summer of gaming coverage kicks off next week. What's the exact date that our coverage kicks off, Tina?
June 4th.
4th. Okay.
Currently.
June 4th, next week.
Scoop!
As of right now.
I got the game to say it.
Cool.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Amazing. Well, the game didn't
it's
actually
not
say
audio. It's on the screen. I programmed
Oh.
the screen to say it.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like his hat. The game does make a honking sound. Hold on. Almost
What?
there. Almost there.
This is
Ready?
good. Yep.
And scoop.
Scoop.
It's just a little white blob.
Okay. And
Oh,
with that, thank you, Justin. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Borba, working behind the scenes. Everybody, stay safe. We'll see you guys next week. My name is Damon. This is IGN Game Scoop, and we're out.